Welcome back to another episode of the Elite Service Podcast, Unfiltered. Today we're going to be talking about some strong conversation topics that have to do with day-to-day operations in the HVAC business. Here's a couple questions. Question number one, what does a typical workday look like for your HVAC technicians from the moment they clock in? These guys are killers. They come in on time every single day and they get straight to work. These guys get into the shop, they load the truck up, they get their tools straight, and they get right to it. Every day we're in the field. It's very important to stay sharp. It's very important to have all your tools in order and ready to go to get the job done throughout the day. And once you're in the field, it's time to execute. Question number two. How do you schedule and prioritize service calls, especially during peak season? It gets a bit hectic. During peak season, the phone doesn't stop ringing. Everyone has an emergency. Everyone needs a service. Everyone needs your undivided attention. It is very important to make your customers each individually feel very important when it comes to their service, their home, and their units. When it comes to scheduling and communication, it's all about the communication. Make sure you're communicating with your customer and giving them timelines that you're going to be there. Even if you're running late, make sure you text them, you call them, you're just communicating with the customer throughout the day so they know when you're going to be at their house. Question number three, what's the biggest challenge you face with dispatching and routing technicians efficiently? Well, here's the thing. The biggest challenge to that is knowing where your technicians are and, properly routing them along the way to get to each job. If you have a customer up north of the state and then a customer in the southern part of the state, and then you got service calls in the middle, you have to properly route these guys. Whoever's the closest technician to that job, to be most efficient, you should have him go to that service call. So that's kind of the biggest challenge when it comes to dispatching. But, sometimes you got to do what you got to do. Sometimes you're up in North Jersey and you got a service call down in South Jersey and you got to get there. So, it might be an hour ride, but at the end of the day, your customer needs you and it's worth it. So take the ride. Question number four, how do you handle emergency calls or same day requests without throwing off the schedule? This has a lot to do with proper delegation. So when you are getting same day requests, emergency heat calls, pipes bursting, a bunch of different stuff like that, it's kind of like getting thrown into the fire. You have to properly execute all these calls throughout the day and make sure all your customers get undivided attention when it comes to servicing their units. So I would go ahead and say that is exactly how you handle emergency calls and same day requests. Question number five, what steps do you take to ensure technicians have the right parts and tools before heading to their jobs? I use this little acronym, PPP, proper prior planning. It prevents piss poor piping practices. So you got to know your job. You got to know where you're going. You got to know what you're doing and properly map out what that job takes to get the job done. So if that means tools, hoses, gauges, whatever it is, you have to write up a list and you have to be an intelligent service technician and you have to properly think and plan out your day. No distractions, no nothing, all about the business, and properly equip yourself with the tools you need to get the job done properly. All right, we're going to go into a little bit of a different segment and kind of pivot our questions here. So this has to do with customer interaction and service. This is a very important topic when it comes to being a service technician, being a service manager. Question number one, how do you keep customers informed about arrival windows and job progress? Guys, if your job is going super smooth, good for you. But I'll tell you this, 90% of the time, that's not the case. These jobs are all different. They all call for different things. Honestly, it all has to do with communicating with the customer. If you have a slip up, if you need to go get a part, if something's delayed, you need to let your customers know what is going on. It's their house, it's their project, they're paying at the end of the day. So I would go ahead and say communicating with the customer is the best thing you can do when it comes to letting them know windows and what the progress of their job actually is. Question number two, when it comes to customer interaction and service, what is your process when a technician discovers additional issues on site? Very simple answer. You need to communicate with the customer. A lot of the things we do are unseen, okay? You might crack open a system and open up a complete can of worms, and it's something that is unavoidable sometimes. So as long as you properly communicate with the customer and you're telling them exactly what's going on with their project or service, I don't see there being any issue on that end. So communicate with the customer, properly inform them with what is actually going on the job. Question number three, how do you deal with difficult or frustrated customers? Guys, if your customer is frustrated or difficult, you need to step back and properly assess the situation and handle it properly. Because a lot of the times these things are very stressful. There's money involved. There's different factors. You need to properly explain yourself and explain what's going on to the customer and lower your tone of voice and be soothing when you're explaining some of these things, because they can be very stressful. So when it comes to dealing with difficult customers, I would go ahead and say, keep your calm, keep your cool, properly explain yourself. You are the professional, and at the end of the day, your opinion and your knowledge is what jurisdicts what's going on the job. So I would say just keep it cool, and as long as they have a solid understanding, most of the time they're going to understand. You're going to have to get the job done regardless. Question number 5, how do you educate customers about maintenance and long-term system health? Guys, your system is very important, okay? These things are just like you. You need to properly maintain them. You need to properly clean them. You have to change your filters. It is very important to explain to your customer how important service and maintenance is when it comes to longevity and system health. Educate them on maintenance. Send them off with some pieces of information that they can read up on and properly educate themselves. I know a lot of customers that enjoy educating themselves on their home and their systems in their home. So as long as you're giving them the most information, you should not have a problem. Here we go. The last segment for this podcast: inventory, equipment, and maintenance. Guys, these are all very important things. Keeping your inventory up to date, your equipment and your maintenance. These are some of the most important things when it comes to properly running an HVAC business. So how do you track inventory for commonly used parts and materials? Guys, keep a shelf life of these things, okay? If I'm on installs, 4 installs a week, 5 installs a week, and you have typical parts that you use every day, order in bulk, get a better price, properly track your inventory, and just keep things on the shelf so that you don't have to go looking for these things the day of the job. So I would go ahead and say that inventory is one of the number one things when it comes to success in properly running jobs in HVAC business at the end of the day. How often do you maintain or replace company tools and equipment? A lot of these times, these tools are very expensive, okay? It makes a lot of sense to properly maintenance your tools, just like maintaining your system. They're very expensive pieces of equipment. You need them every day to properly get the job done, and you should get years out of your tools. I still got the same drills and sawzalls from the moment I started years ago, and they're a little beat up nowadays, but they still operate and work. But that's because I put them back, I clean them sometimes periodically, I lubricate them with WD-40. It all has to do with how you take care of your stuff and how you take care of your tools, and you should have no problem with them lasting. But I'll tell you this, if there's complaints and it makes your job easier just to go out and buy a new tool, don't be scared to do it. It's all part of doing business. Like, you need the proper tools to properly get the job done. This ensures efficiency and how you get the job done in a timely manner. So I would go ahead and say, get the tools you need to get the job done properly. And that concludes another episode of the Elite Service Podcast, Unfiltered. Guys, thank you for tuning in, and like, comment, subscribe, because you're the only reason why we're here today and doing this kind of stuff. Thank you.